Hi everyone, welcome to my channel if you're new here, welcome back to my channel if you're a returning viewer and subscriber. In today's video I'm going to be talking you through all the books that I read throughout the month of January. We kicked off the year by reading 4 books. It was a really strange month. In some ways it felt really long. The first book I read feels like I read it ages and ages ago. In other ways I feel like I was struggling to fit in more than 4 books, which is kind of crazy. I usually read like at least 5 or 6. Bit of a disappointment in that, but I also did start the month with a 5-star read. If you're new here, 5-star reads are like unheard of in my space. That was really fun, and maybe that caused me to be a little bit slumpy, I don't know. I think I definitely was feeling a bit slumpy. I didn't have much desire to pick up a book. Also, I'm not really into reading physically right now. I'm reading tons on my Kindle. I'm just suddenly in love with my Kindle. Quite a lot of audiobooks as well. Aside from all of that, I'm still happy with what I did manage to get to. One book was on my 2024 TBR. One book I've been reading for a long time I finally managed to get done. We had that 5-star read, like I said, and all round, probably overall, a success. Also, we are in my wrap-up jumper. Again, if you're new here, for some reason I always end up in this jumper whenever I'm filming wrap-up videos. I don't know how, so bizarre, I don't know, but I couldn't be bothered to change out of it because I was like, that's a silly reason to change, just because I always end up wearing it. But yeah, I don't actually wear the jumper that often. Without further ado, let's just get into the video. So the first book that I read in January was Legends and Lattes by baldree. Like I said, this was a 5-star read. Such an exciting thing to have. I used to have like a little bit of a pattern running where I used to read a really good book, the first book I picked up per year, and then that really slipped off over the previous 2 years. I think I gave the first book like 2.5 stars last year. This book is a cozy fantasy, despite how little I liked Ember wasn't Reflective of Fairies, which I read over December. I have found that this genre is indeed for me. I did really love this book so much. We're following Viv. She's an orc and she has been fighting and like on these kind of like crusades her entire life, and she decides to put down the sword and move to a new town and start a coffee shop. Coffee is something that's like famous in some lands but not in others. In this particular land she's introducing this town to coffee. It's the most beautiful story. It's an ensemble cast of characters. They're all kind of like creatures that you'd find, very much a Dungeons and Dragons kind of vibe. It's about Viv like trying to set up the coffee shop, trying to make new friends within this land, and also trying to come to terms with the fact that she is completely changing her kind of pace and her way of life, her way of being. The food descriptions were incredible, so yum. So there was so much writing about these like cinnamon buns. They were like massive cinnamon buns, and I just was craving them the entire time I read. Also just felt like a cup of coffee, which is just classic. So the characters are lovely. The ones that we are meant to be reading for are all very lovable. In particular, there's a rat who is actually the baker within this kitchen. He's like probably like a few feet tall, like 3 feet tall. So precious. I genuinely don't think I've ever loved a character more in my life, which is such a funny thing to say, but I just loved him. Thought he was the sweetest thing ever. Every single time he showed up, I just like highlighted the whole page. So reading this book coincided with quite a stressful situation, and being able to pair the like unenjoyability of living with such a beautiful, precious story that had just complete escapism and showed me really about like what matters in life, about like your connections with people and what's like within your heart, and especially how you can show that to people who don't know you so well or might make assumptions about you. I just loved every single second of it. The thing with cozy fantasy is that they're meant to be really low stakes, and I've heard that people complain about this one not having a plot. I would say that there is a pretty substantial plot, and I also think that the stakes, yes, they are lower than the average fantasy book. It is a bit tense. It's like tenser than something you might experience in real life. You know, there's these people out to get Viv. Her life is on the line a couple of times. I wouldn't be scared off by the fact that people say there are elements of this that might seem a little bit boring, because I don't think they're like that at all. I read this on Kindle, but I'd definitely be buying myself a physical copy. I'm so excited to have it sitting on my shelves. I just loved every second of it. Like I said, such a good time. I finished that book. I realized I was in the middle of like 10 different books and I really wanted to finish one of them, so I picked up Beautiful World, What Are You again. I've been slowly kind of making my way through that, but I decided to really dedicate myself to that so that I could finish the vlog I was filming on that book. Did an entire like 1 book focus reading vlog, and I take you along to Ireland with me. I went to Dublin back in November, and it's like that whole experience, but it's mostly just like focusing on my thoughts in the book and everything I felt whilst reading it. Beautiful World, What Are You follows 4 people who are living in Dublin in present day. In classic rooney style, it's about relationship dynamics and also just the young people's place within the world that we live in. Every second chapter is an email exchange between the 2 female characters, Alice and Eileen. Those chapters were quite politics heavy, and I know that lots of people didn't get on with that when they read it themselves, but I didn't find them too much to deal with. I did find it quite a conflicting book to rate. I definitely didn't love it as much as I loved Normal People. Normal People was a 5-star read for me, and it didn't even come close to that. It didn't have the same kind of linear narrative as any of Sally Rooney's previous novels. Even Conversation with Friends, which is one that I didn't love, but I still think it had much more of like a structure and was easier to kind of define, easier to put in place how I felt about it. That was also combined with the fact that I read it over a much longer period of time than I've read her previous 2 works. And even without comparing it to those previous 2, standing alone, I just think that it was a bit of an odd one. There were some lines that I felt really relatable, really easy to connect with, and then others that I was just like, I don't really want to be reading this. It was a perfect book to be reading in Dublin. The book is set in Dublin and it really aligned with everything I saw. I talk about this more in the video. If you want to hear more of my thoughts in more detail and depth and hear me better explain myself, then you can check out the video, of course, because I'm not even going to touch on how I really feel about this book in this video. I definitely heard of people kind of either loving or hating it. I didn't really feel either emotion towards it, so I kind of sat somewhere a little bit in the middle, but I did think that it was well written. I just don't think it really like got to the bottom of what it was trying to do, so I gave it 3.5 stars. I said in the video that I'd probably rank it second in terms of my enjoyment with Sally Rooney's novels, but actually I do think it is perhaps my least favourite of them all. It's one that I might need to think on a little bit. The next book that I finished in January was Indigo by Deveny. This is a book that I read on Kindle. I bought it because it was 99p in the Kindle sale. I had always been intrigued by it. It's a small town romance book, but it's also got this kind of mystery plot line running alongside it as well. I'm already really into small town books, small town romances, but after reading Flawless by Elsie Silver, I just really liked the idea of it being a small town that was like tucked away. The male love interest works on a farm, like a plot of land, and it's very much giving cowboy vibes, just also like the Chestnut Spring series. I always felt very keen to pick this book up. I always found it entertaining. It held my attention as I read it, but I never felt like I was like obsessed with it. I also think that it really helped that there was that mystery plotline. I think without the mystery plotline, it would have been just like a really kind of mid romance book, but the mystery element was really interesting. So we're following Winslow and Griffin. Winslow is new to this town. Her grandfather lives there. She used to visit it a lot as a child, but this big dramatic accident happens with her parents, which results in their deaths, and she moves to this town to kind of make a fresh start after breaking up with her long-term boyfriend. She meets Griffin. Griffin is the eldest son in this family who were like the founding family of this town. They're called the Edens, and this book is the first book in the Eden series. So every single book in this series, I think there's 6 of them, 5 or 6 of them, follows a different Eden sibling and their personal romance story. The mystery element comes in because Winslow is a police officer. She's joining the town to be the chief of police. It's very much like about her career and her settling into this town where people are reluctant to have new people, particularly as she is like a young female and she's being like elected as chief of police when like majority of the people who work within the police are men who are perhaps older than her. It ties a little bit in with kind of Griffin's family history, the mystery plot line. I thought that that ending was kind of satisfying, which surprised me because often I really like mysteries and like thrillers and things like that until we get to like the big reveal about what's actually going on, and then I'm kind of like ultimately disappointed by the result of everything, but I actually felt quite satisfied with that. But I just didn't have any like overwhelming emotion towards this book, so I ended up giving it 3 stars. I thought it was well written. I loved the town. You could tell that Deveny had written things before. It was just like a really solid story. It didn't really arise any emotions within me. It was very cute. Yeah, that's it basically. I'm not sure whether I'm going to pick up the rest of the series. I feel like if I just see them around for like 99p if they're in the Kindle sale, then I might do, but I'm not going to be making it like a priority. They're not books I'm going to be seeking out, but I think they're a fun time. I do think that, you know, ultimately the Chestnut Spring series is probably the series for me. I definitely want to be picking up Heartless, the second book in that, very soon. But I do think this book kind of like satiated my need for that kind of vibe. So I would say if you like the Chestnut Springs, you'll probably like this, but if you love that, don't go into this thinking that it's going to like be everything that that was, because it's not. It's just, it's a different tone. And then the final book that I finished in the month of January was An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. This is a book that is on my oh my gosh, I just realised I haven't been holding up any of these books. They're sitting on this table next to me. It's because I've had so many ebooks. Okay, here is Beautiful Where Are You in all her glory with this lovely edition. This is a gift from someone actually. I love this white cover. You can only get it at some places. But anyways, there she is. In case you want to know, I did read from this physically. An Ember in the Ashes. Okay, I started this book physically and then I switched to the audiobook. I listened to the audiobook on Spotify because Spotify's got this whole like free audiobook thing for premium users. What I want to say is that first of all, before I even go into the plot of this, the audiobook is fantastic. It's a dual, what is it called? Dual POV? Yeah, dual POV book. So each chapter is written by either the FMC or the MMC. So the audiobook had a narrator for each of the characters, each of those 2 characters, and they're just perfect. Particularly the guy. The guy was so good. The girl's voice was very kind of like shy and timid. She just reminded me of like a mouse. Listening to that on like 2.5 times speed was like a little bit difficult, but yeah, overall just a really fantastic audiobook. Really captured the kind of like energy of the book, which I really enjoyed. Okay, An Ember in the Ashes follows Leia and Elias. The book is set in this kind of like, I've heard people in the past say it's like similar to like a gladiator thing, but it's more like, if you've read Fourth Wing, it's like the War College in that. So Elias is a member of the War College. It's a very kind of tense situation. He's leading up to his graduation and he really does not want to be there. The book opens with him actually attempting to desert. Then we also find Leia. of Leia, okay. But also following Leia. Leia is a 17-year-old girl and she lives with her family, a really kind of poor rundown area of the city. The book also opens with this big dramatic thing happening to her family, and within that her brother is captured and he's taken away. So Leia is desperate to find him, be reunited with him, and so she joins the resistance force, the kind of like rebel camp of people trying to take down the government or to try and like infiltrate it a little bit in order to make things change. First point, this is the most solid YA fantasy ever. I so wish I'd read this when I was younger, because I think my ultimate issue with it, only issue with it, is the fact that I don't really fit within the intended audience. This is not me saying that like I'm too old to read YA, like I couldn't possibly do that, but I just don't think I find the same enjoyment out of it. I think I'm a bit too critical maybe, or I've just read so much of it that I don't feel like picking them up as much as I used to. YA fantasy used to be the only thing I read, and if I'd read that within that era of me really wanting to pick those up, I would have absolutely eaten this one up and loved every single second of it. As it stood, I really did enjoy it. There's a romance that forms Leia and Elias, and it's just so beautiful. It's just everything and more. But don't be thinking it's all going to be like lovely and light-hearted, especially because it's YA. It is definitely much more brutal than the average YA book. I'd probably say this is maybe upper end of YA, and I would say there's a number of trigger warnings, especially for kind of like essay and things like that. Some of those things were quite difficult to read, and I would say that if you are more prone to not get on with something like that, then you might want to have the content warnings. But along with that, like I've been saying, if you've read Fourth Wing, then you've probably seen these two things align a little bit, and if you've loved that, you will love this. Like, it doesn't have that like spicy romance that Fourth Wing does or anything like that, but if you love the kind of like vibe of Fourth Wing and the battles and the structure of the school and this kind of like corruption running alongside this massive like foundation of the War College, you would love this book. I think they're so similar, they're actually so linked. I think that this is just like the stepping stone that Fourth Wing went up to, not in terms of like quality but in terms of like age range. I think this book in 2024 in the present day is so underrated. It came out a number of years ago. Let's see, I think it was 2014 or 2015 or something like that. Yeah, 2015. And I definitely recommend this. If YA fantasy is still your thing and you haven't read this one, this is definitely worth picking up. It's the first book I think in a 4-part series. I really don't know whether I'm going to continue the series. I give it 3.5 stars, but it's more like a 3.75, like it's almost a 4. It's a really, really solid, good book. Just like all round, every single element of it was fantastic. But like I said, I just don't think I'm drawn to YA fantasies as much, and I've got so much on my shelves I want to get through. It's kind of like with the Edens, I'm not in any rush to pick the next book up. I might potentially audiobook the next book in the future, because this book just set everything up so well. It's such a good book, so well paced as well. There's always something happening. It's kind of like a little bit slow burn. It like remains really entertaining and just like it's a really good time. I really do highly recommend this. I feel like even if I ended up unhauling this along the way, I would still shout about this book from the rooftops, so I think it's fantastic. Okay everybody, there we have it. The 4 books that I read in, what's the month? January. Funny reading month. I'd say overall quite good. I pretty much enjoyed everything. We had a 3-star, 3.5 star, another 3.5 star, and we had a 5-star. Quite solid ratings. I'm really happy. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up to let me know that you did. If you want to see my TBR for February, you're welcome to check out the video. I'll have it linked in the corner and down below. So many exciting books. I'm really, really excited to talk to you about how I'm finding them in my wrap up, because I'm already in the middle of one of them and it's amazing. If you want to stick around, please feel free to subscribe, because I'd love to have you here. And without further ado, I'll leave in peace, and I'll see you very, very soon in a couple of days for another video. Bye bye.